Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. So I was going to delay making this video until I felt fully recovered. Definitely not fully recovered now. Um, Although I'm better now than I thought I'd be at this time. But it's the middle of the day. Got time to kill. Maybe talking about it will make me feel a little bit better. Um, so yeah, I recently had, and when I say recently, I mean yesterday, had a very severe depressive relapse, and it was the result of me trying to get off of my antidepressant Effexor. Um, and I just wanted to talk about the detox process from antidepressants in general and Effexor in particular. Um, so um, antidepressants get a really bad rap. People always say, like, there's all these studies saying, oh, the antidepressants don't really work, or they're evil, or there are too many people on antidepressants. And I think that antidepressants, usually when we say antidepressants, we mean SSRIs. I think that they're a good thing. I think they're very overprescribed. I don't agree with using them as the problem is to treat depression, even when it really is real depression that needs, clinical treatment. Antidepressants are the first line of defense, and I don't think that's the proper use for them. So it's not that I think antidepressants are bad; I think they're misused. And like me, it saved me. Antidepressants have saved me multiple times, including, I guess, this morning. Even if I still feel pretty shitty right now. Um, so Yeah, so what to say? But anyway, I guess I started taking antidepressants regularly when I was 16 years old, and since then have been started at age 16, and yeah, it would have been the spring of my sophomore year in high school, and from that time, 16 and now 39, so 23 years, I've mostly been on something, at various times. Not always, but I've mostly been on something. Sometimes it's been stuff that's helped, sometimes it's been stuff that hasn't, but I've generally been medicated for, 23 years. And yeah, for the most part, they've been helpful. The uh, thing is, the one that I'm on right now, Effexor XR, sometime called venlafaxine, is the non-brand name or something, or I don't know how you pronounce it. It's venlafaxine. I don't know. We can just call it Effexor. That's the brand name. But that's like it's a really weird one. It's a little bit different than other SSRIs. In fact, I'm not even sure it even is an SSRI. I think it's an SSNRI, whatever the hell that means. I know it's not. They're not quite the same thing. But I've been on that since my the failed suicide attempt when I was 24. So I've been pretty much on Effexor for 15 years, 14 or 15 years. And again, super helpful. But the problem, like, one reason that they generally resist, a lot of doctors don't like to prescribe Effexor is, well, one thing is it's known to have bad side effects. For the most part, I don't have them, but I'll discuss that a little further. And then it's really hard to get off of, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, was just like what the withdrawal process of an SSRI is. Um, so like Effexor, basically when you're withdrawing from an SSRI, there's I guess you could say 3 stages to it. There's the acute phase of the withdrawal. That's basically the acute phase of an SSRI withdrawal, in my experience at least. To me, the acute. This is how I define the acute phase of withdrawal until it's out of your system. How long it takes you to get out of your system, that depends on the person, and it might be different. Each detox might be a little different. Although in my experiences, it's always been pretty consistent. That's the acute phase. Then there's the post-acute phase, which is just what happens after. And then there is the phase that may or may not happen, and that's the return of the initial symptoms that you went on to fix it in the first place. So you could have really bad effects in the acute phase, and then but then there's also this thing called post-acute withdrawal syndrome, where you've detoxed, it's out of your system, but you're still getting other symptoms, other withdrawal symptoms. And sorry, I know this is really boring. You're still getting other withdrawal symptoms. But that will last. Who knows how long that could last? But it's no longer. I don't know what to say other than that it's no longer acute because it's already out of your system. But what you're experiencing are withdrawal symptoms, even though you've already withdrawn. What you're not experiencing is necessarily the return of the initial symptoms. Okay. And then there is the just like I said, return of the initial symptoms. And one thing that I've gotten out of, because this last time I've tried to get off this shit. It's got to be at least 10 times, more than 10 times. I've never succeeded, and I keep trying, and each time I always say I'm never going to try to get off it again. But one thing that I have gotten is after doing it so many times, I can tell the difference between return of the initial symptoms and just withdrawal symptoms. Like I can, having gone through it enough, I know I can tell. Like this morning, I knew that what I was feeling was not some type of post-acute withdrawal. It was the return of the depression, anxiety. So I knew I had to go back on it. All right, so let's just talk about my story of it, like what happened for me. 2021 tough year for depression, basically due to a bad reaction to transcranial magnetic stimulation, which I was on to treat my my fatigue. But obviously, in hindsight, I know now that could never have worked because my fatigue wasn't from the depression; it was from the fact that I had sleep apnea. And but 2021's come and gone, and mostly, feel, we're getting late into 22 now. 22's been better. I think I made a video earlier this year where I was still struggling with it. It wasn't like all, peaches and roses or whatever you want to say, but it was generally 2022 certainly been a lot better than 21. And I've gotten over, whatever bad reaction I had there. But I still had the fatigue. So, and then I finally tried the sleep apnea thing. That started to improve it. But, I was in one thing that with the sleep apnea initially, when I did it, not only did it get rid of the fatigue, but it got rid of the fatigue and it improved my depression, pretty dramatically. So, and then it started to get worse again, which happens. So, and I'll make a different video about this. So in desperation, there was this one morning, it was like 2 weeks ago, I think. I was thinking I don't even know if I can go to work today. But I remember from back when I was 25 or 26, I think 26, actually. It was 26. It might be, you know what? No, it wasn't 26. I'm sorry. Forget what I just said. Ever since it happened when I was 29, right around the 29th, 30th, 29th, right when I was 29 going on 30. Excuse me. I had, that's when I first came across the Weston Price diet. And I had, one thing the Weston Price diet really pushes is raw milk. And so back then, all those years ago, started drinking the raw milk, didn't really expect it to have an effect. So it wasn't a placebo effect. But I noticed that within that same day, I started feeling dramatically better. And a couple days later, I was like, you know what? Probably my depression just came from eating unhealthy, so I don't need these medications anymore. So I got off, and we can talk about that withdrawal later. I want to talk about the current one later. But I remember, so I wasn't thinking a couple weeks ago about getting off my medications. I was just thinking that, oh wow, yeah, that raw milk thing really did seem to help. And I just kind of dismissed it. Like later on, I figured like, well, probably wasn't the raw milk. It was probably that I was, eating cleaner other than that, and had, given up caffeine. It probably wasn't the raw milk. And that's what I was thinking. And but I was so depressed, and I wasn't even really depressed. That's probably the wrong word for it. It was more like anxious, because I have an anxious type of depression. I was so anxious. I wasn't sure I could work. I was desperate. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go get some raw milk. And so I did it. And again, I did not expect it to work. I got two of those, like, you can see them in like 7-Elevens. Although, you can't get raw milk in a 7-Eleven, but they're like this size things. I got two of them and drank them both, and still felt like crap. Went to work, and I really wasn't thinking about it. And then like 2 hours in, 3 hours in, all of a sudden it was like, damn, I feel really good, like really good. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it is the raw milk. I don't know. And then that's really what made everything come together. So, I started, I don't think it's anything magical about raw milk per se. I really just think it's fermented foods, the gut microbiome. I must just have they've done studies, and they've said people with depression have like really fucked up gut flora. So it must just be something like that. So, a couple weeks of, I wouldn't even say good gut health stuff. The only difference is I've been drinking, and maybe we can talk about this in a different video, but it's been more probiotic stuff in my diet. But I've been eating normal foods. It's just that I've been also adding raw milk, miso, raw kombucha or kimchi, and like real probiotic foods, unpasteurized probiotic foods, and they've made a huge difference. They've helped with the depression, they've helped with the anxiety, they've helped with the like a lot, and they've even helped with the fatigue and the sleep. Now I'm still not sleeping great, but I don't need naps anymore during the day, and I'm able to like maintain like mostly a sleep schedule. Plus, like, is 7 hours a night of sleep really that bad? Like, maybe you're not supposed to sleep 8 hours. Like, I don't feel tired or anything. So, other than maybe residual effects from the medication. So I felt great. So what I was thinking is, I feel great, except for two things, I guess. One is what feels to me, and maybe I'm wrong, like residual fatigue from the medications, from the Effexor. And the other is stomach pains, which is definitely from the medication. I know it's from the medication because I've been dealing with it for years. Neither of those things are a huge deal. I mean, the thing is, I felt no depression at all, no anxiety at all. The energy levels, yeah, maybe they could have been a little bit better, but way better than they'd probably been in, 20 plus years. So, I can live with it, and, the stomach pains, okay, those are pretty annoying, but, again, it's life. I've definitely been through a lot worse. But I was still thinking like, but it was beyond that. It was like, there was this instinctive feeling like in my body when I was taking the medicine in the morning, like, and I'm certainly not saying you should trust the gut instinct, but it was like my body seemed to like be saying, don't take this medicine. You don't need it anymore. It's making you sick. Stop taking it. And, like an idiot, I listened. And, so I can tell you, like I said, I've tried to get off Effexor a million times. It's recommended that when you want to get off it, what you do is you pare down your dose to 37.5, which is the lowest dose, and you stay on that for a while so you gradually get down to 37.5 if you're not already there, and before you try to go off completely. I mean, there's always going to be that that there's always going to be that some kind of jump, and Effexor is known as the hardest, like I've said before, the hardest one to get off of. Um, and I was on 150. I still am on 150. But I was just like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna stop now. And that may seem like super retarded, and I'm certainly not advising it. But the thing is, here's the thing: is no, you shouldn't do it, and you shouldn't do it for the exact same reasons that it just caused me to relapse. And the truth is, I got up easy. I mean, you could. I mean, you're running a risk of like having a psychotic break if you do an unsupervised, or which is what I did, or without going like by such a big jump, 150. But the thing is, when I was 29, the first time I really tried to get off, I did it from 150 to 0, and I was fine. I mean, like I would say, the only real thing I got was like some pretty serious depression on day 4. But other than that, it was after the acute phase ended, day 4 or day 5, I was fine. And now eventually I relapsed, but I'm 100% positive that the eventual relapse I had was just a return of the initial symptoms. It had nothing to do with not tapering and stuff. Basically, yes, you should taper, but the reason you should taper, in my experience, and it could be different with other people, is because the acute stuff, those first 4 days, 5 days, whatever they are for you. Some people might only be 3 days, is going to be a lot harder the bigger the dose is. Like for me, it was pretty tough going from 150 to 0. So just want to talk about what happened. Uh, Basically, I mean, you can think of it in terms of hours. So you wake up one day, or like I wake up one day and I take it. Then sometime during the course of that day, I think, you know what, I'm not going to take this shit anymore. I don't need it. I feel great. I don't need this anymore. And I feel great other than these stomach pains that the that the medication is giving me. So I said, I'm going to stop taking it. I didn't throw the meds out or anything. I kept them there, but I was going to stop taking them. And so I first 24 hours, no big deal, because you do 24 hours every day, right? You take 24 hours. But even after that 24 hours, I guess a little bit on day 2 is when I first started noticing like, I started getting like some feelings of depression, but it wasn't that bad. And basically that's what happens, like first day is fine. Somewhere around the hour 24 mark, it starts gradually getting worse, and it's a trend with ups and downs. And for me, like again, it depends. But if if I'm going into a detox, because like I said, I've done it like 10 times by now. If I'm going in feeling really well when I'm going into it, 24 hours is when I start to feel some effects. Like maybe like 26 hour 26. That kind of just gradually gets worse from like hour 26, 27, 28, maybe even later, maybe even around hour 30. Probably more like hour 30. Hour 30 to hour 69. It gradually gets worse. It's hour 69 to hour 93 that is like in the worst of the detox stage. That's like every time I've tried to get off, and I've had some that were successful, some that were not so successful. It's always been in that area, that hour 69 through hour 93. Like I said, it's weird that it would happen every time that I've made it that far. I mean, though that's been the worst. So having gone through it so many times, I kind of knew what to expect. So even though yesterday was hell, I was thinking like, okay, you're going through these debilitating detox. I couldn't go to work yesterday. I was too depressed, and it was like a bad anxious type of depression. I did have some physical symptoms too, and not as bad as some of the other ones I've read about, from Effexor. But mostly it was just it's sort of like seriously anxious depression. It was really bad, like I said, hour 69 through 93. And then At hour 93, like out of nowhere, like there was like a very, like I would say within the span of like half an hour, just like this kind of relief, like this kind of like dramatic relief, like where I still felt shitty, but like I could just feel that the detox symptoms were over. Felt bad, but I was like, well, the detox symptoms are done. And shortly after that, I was able to go to sleep. Woke up feeling horrible, but it again, like I said, I could tell what it was. I could really tell, like, this isn't detox. This is depression. This is actual depression. So I said, no need to take it any further. And, I went and I took my pill, and that would have been about 5 hours ago. So, I mean, really, I'm doing so much better than I was 5 hours ago. Like 5 hours ago, I was in, oh my God. That was just like total. I mean, I've been worse, but it was really bad. It was, um, the, so I wouldn't be surprised if I'm close to feeling normal by like, maybe not tomorrow, but the day after that, I wouldn't be surprised. Um, so no, but I mean, everybody's detox is different. Everybody's, so like, I guess I know that for future references. So I still do want to get off it. I really, but I think that what my plan is now is I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this. I might have to wait until till 23. What I was thinking is, recover from this. That's probably going to take like another 2 weeks to be like fully recovered. Then go to 75 milligrams for 2 weeks. Then when I've adjusted to that, go to 37 and a half milligrams for another 2 weeks. And then when I'm on 37 and a half milligrams, what I would do is, sign up for that ketamine therapy. And the idea would be I would schedule, I would make sure that, 69 hours or so before my first ketamine session is when I would go off. So I would be using the ketamine therapy to help me get off the meds. And it might not work, but that's basically if the I can't, like, I mean, I've done some pretty dumb shit. I don't see myself ever trying to just go off from 150 again. I would make sure that I would get down to 37 and a half first, make sure I was feeling well there. And then even going off the 37 and a half, because I have gone off from 37 and a half, and, you know, it's unpleasant. It's unpleasant. It's not as bad as what I went through yesterday. But it's easy. Like, why not? Like, like it's easier to, like, I would rather do it, with the help of ketamine, since I know that when I do get off it, get, like, I can get off the stuff. Like I said, I made it through yesterday, which was hell. So I can get off the stuff. That's not the problem. The problem is that when I get off, the symptoms return. So, I mean, I'm going to need something else to treat it. And, maybe ketamine ends up doing that. And when I say ketamine, I mean at an official ketamine clinic with a doctor, not like ketamine that I'm going to get on, not that you could get on the street or something. So yeah, I mean, I hope I get a chance to try that. I want to do it in September, but logistically, I don't know if it can, because I got to get my gums restored. I have to go in for a colonoscopy, and then, then I've got to go to this like gigantic family reunion, and then I got to go on vacation soon. So I mean, I've just got so much going on. I might not be able to do it until next year. Which, I mean, whatever. I mean, like I said, the only real symptom is the stomach pain, so I can hang in for a little bit longer with that. Yeah, I wanted to talk more in this video just about like what depression feels like, but the truth is, it's really difficult to describe. Depression is such a broad term that it's not really meaningful. Like, for me, like the depression I was feeling yesterday, like I've mentioned many times before, I have an anxious type of depression. So it was always very hard for me to relate to people who I believe, I'm not saying I didn't believe them, but people who were saying they were like so depressed, all they could do is, um, play video games or whatever. Like take somebody like DBDR. I have no doubt in my mind he's depressed. I have no doubt in my mind he's suffering. I'm not trying to play it down. It's just that he has a different kind of depression than I do. Because like when I'm depressed, I cannot make videos. I mean, I can barely talk. I have a hard time breathing. Like that's the kind of that's like the kind of depression it can be. Although the depression I had last year was probably maybe a little bit more akin to what DBDR had. I don't think it was the same thing, but it was that was more of what I think closer to what people mean, like what most people describe depression as. Whereas I have more depression and anxiety than true depression, and the I don't it's really an apples and oranges thing. I don't think you can describe one as better or worse than the other. It's more like I think if you have mild depression and anxiety, that's not as bad as severe conventional depression. I don't know, which is like I had some experience with that last year, but certainly mild conventional depression isn't as bad as severe depression and anxiety. So it's more about the severity as opposed to which one's inherently worse. The with maybe one like kind of like caveat that I want to make, and I want to say this without trying to play down anybody else's symptoms, is that when I was dealing with like the real like conventional, some more conventional style depression last year, as depressed as I was, as like I was depressed, things sucked, but I could still like do things to like occupy my mind. I could eat, I could do at least some exercise, not a ton because I didn't have a lot of energy. I could watch TV, play video games, watch YouTube videos, make YouTube videos. Not always when it got really bad. I could even work some of the time. Not always, but whereas like the kind of depression that I had yesterday and this morning, the anxious type of depression, is much more debilitating. It's like not only can I not work because whatever, who cares, right? But like I can't do anything to pass the time. Like I literally can't even turn on YouTube and just listen to it. I can't do it. That's how bad it is. It's that all encompassing and crippling. So, and now I'm assuming that you could have a non-anxious depression that would have a similar impact. I've heard of it, like some people who literally can't get dressed. They actually have to, their depression is so bad they have to have people dress them. I've never gotten to that point. So, but in my experience, for me, the type of anxious depression that I've experienced has always been worse than the worst kind of non-anxious depression. But I don't think that necessarily means it is inherently worse. It's just that the ones that I experienced, the version of it that I experienced, happens to have been worse. Yeah. So anything. The only, I guess I could, the only other thing that I would mention, I'm saying it now when it's like fresh in my mind, although, there was this narrative that Saint Teresa of Avila, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Spanish nun mystic from, back in, I don't even know when. I don't know. It was like the 1500s, the 1600s, the 1700s. I don't know. I think the 1500s. But she would wasn't she's a mystic, so she's not somebody who really liked to talk to people or really share her experiences. But she had like trouble. She founded an order of nuns, and she kind of had like issues with the she just would butt heads with the clergy. Just I think it wasn't so much she didn't really have issues with them; they had issues with her, and she respected the hierarchy. And so there were times where they were saying, We know you're a mystic. We know you're having these experiences. You need to be telling us about them, like what's happening. And because we don't know if this is like from Satan or if you're like preaching heresy or what. It certainly seems like her superiors weren't very sympathetic with her experiences. They didn't like it. They would probably have preferred she'd just gone away, but at least some of them were. But like I said, she respected the hierarchy. So somebody she'd be the kind of person who would normally not share her experiences. And the truth is, she probably never thought that any of the experiences she recorded would be released to the public. They were just stuff she reported to go to her superiors in the church. And she told this one story about how there wasn't really like a lot of, and I, by the way, I've only read this story within another story, so I'm not sure like what happened before or after. It's like a story that just kind of starts in the middle and doesn't seem to have an end. So she's being led by a demon. She would have these altered states. In one of these altered states, she's being led by a demon through this dark, I guess you could call it kind of like an alley, like it's like buried under the ground, and it's hell presumably, so it's dark and like the ground is really wet and gross. So she's being like guided there, and the ground's full of these like really nasty looking reptiles. And so the demon guides her, pushes her, I don't know, to this like hole in the wall. Like by the way, I'm gonna have to give you guys like a trigger warning. If you don't like hearing about traumatic experiences, just stop listening now. The there's like I don't know what you describe it like. It sounds like the way she described it as like a cupboard, but I think what she's trying to describe was like something like more like the size of a locker. So I couldn't really tell, and that there would be that she couldn't lie down in it. So she was like pushed into this like hole in the wall thing and closed. I guess locked in it. And she said it was pitch black in there, but she could still see. She could see it. That like even though like she could see the blackness. And then so in there she couldn't move, and then she starts getting like burned, like burned like alive. And she's not just getting burned alive, she's getting burned with this feeling that this certainty that this is going to go on for the rest of eternity, this like sort of like burning torture and stuff. And so she said absolutely, she said like unbelievable despair, thinking like you're going to be tortured like this, like for all of eternity. Like, not only are you being burned, which is painful, but it's never going to stop. But then she said something that I thought was really interesting, and I had a really hard time understanding, and I think I understand it a little bit better now. She said that, being burned was horrible, and knowing that it was never going to end was horrible. But horrible, more worse than anything she could have ever imagined. But as bad as it was nothing, like nothing whatsoever compared to the pain in her soul. And I remember reading that and being like, what? Because it was really hard for me to understand it as there being anything worse than, even now, like sometimes like something that like worse than physical pain without end. This thing is, that's always been something that really scared me. But when you experience really severe depression, at least for me, I feel like, I mean, again, and by the way, I'm sure that whatever, I'm not even talking about the physical stuff. I'm talking about whatever I went through emotionally these last 24 hours, I'm sure was nothing compared to what she endured. I got off easy. But it offered me, I guess, maybe some insight that I feel like for the first time, like I kind of know what she's talking about. Like just when depression is bad, it's like it's so bad. It's like it's I don't know. And I want to make it clear. I am absolutely, positively not saying that depression is worse than physical pain. Absolutely not. Not saying that. I think that they're different. They're different. You know, they're like, the, but, but I don't know. And I guess what I am saying is that it is, it's conceivable to me at least that you could have a type of emotional pain or emotional or psychological, whatever you want to call it, pain that's worse than any physical pain. I'm not saying it's possible because I don't know, but it's at least conceivable to me. Um, the so yeah, um, but you know the thing is, like I said, I don't think she. I mean, I think she'd be pissed if she knew we were talking about it because I really don't think she wanted. I really don't think she wanted rank and file people to read it. And if that story scares you, I don't think it should because, you know, that kind of stuff is like, that's like the stuff that happens to mystics, you know, like they're the ones who are like, they choose to go into this because, you know, it's for them, it's worth it for for like the spiritual growth they have. So like, um, you know, for her, she said when it was over, it was like one of the greatest experiences of her life. You know, and she said because like only by hitting rock bottom can you achieve the next level of spirituality. But like the thing is, so I don't think. But the reason, like you know, if the story bothers you or any other stories like that bother you, I mean, there's a reason that she didn't want to tell. Like she didn't like to tell these things to other people, and like you know where my family came from, Eastern Europe, like it was very common for the rabbis, you know, when they knew that they were going to die, to gather all their writings in a place and set them on fire, because they would say like, because they're like these stories about these mystical experiences, stories are just going to, they're not really for you, you know. They're not like they're like you know you're so it's they're not something you have to concern yourself with, you know, whatever trauma that they've been through, um, you know, that's got nothing to do with you, you know, and it's stuff that they all signed on for, you know, that's the path they chose, you know, that's what they wanted. So you don't have to worry, you don't have to get stressed about that kind of stuff. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next.